Laura Whitmore was the picture of grace in a quiet suburban life, until her secret affair with 17-year-old Tyler Marks, the neighbor's son, ended in a death that would shock the entire community and destroy everything in its path. The investigation moved quickly in the days that followed. What began as a tragic accident soon revealed itself as something far more sinister. Forensic analysts examined the blood patterns in the basement and concluded that the impact site didn't align with a fall from the stairs. There was evidence of a struggle, scattered items, broken glass, and scratch marks along the floor that pointed to something violent. The bruising on Tyler's arms suggested he had been grabbed, possibly restrained. Autopsy results confirmed it wasn't a clean fall. There were signs of blunt force trauma unrelated to the stairwell. When detectives reviewed the surveillance setup, they discovered the hidden camera Daniel had installed. Although parts of the footage had been deleted, their digital forensics team recovered several corrupted files. The fragments didn't capture the final blow, but they clearly showed the confrontation. Tyler looked surprised and defensive. Daniel was visibly agitated, pacing, pointing, advancing toward him. The aggression was evident even without sound. That footage, incomplete as it was, contradicted Laura's original story. Her claim that Tyler had simply fallen while helping her no longer held. When Daniel was brought in for questioning, he didn't deny the confrontation. He admitted he had discovered the affair weeks earlier and had been collecting evidence. At first, he claimed he only intended to confront Tyler, to scare him, to make him stop. He insisted the boy's death was an accident, that Tyler tried to flee, tripped, and fell. But the pressure mounted. Investigators showed him the video frames. They showed him the bruises, the blood, the discrepancies. Eventually, after hours of silence and quiet breakdowns, Daniel confessed that he had lost control. He said the moment he saw Tyler in the basement, something snapped. All the humiliation, the anger, the betrayal boiled over. He didn't intend to kill him, he claimed, but he couldn't stop himself once the fight began. He pushed Tyler harder than he meant to. The impact was instant, fatal. The panic afterward drove him to erase part of the footage, to clean up just enough to make it look like a fall. Laura, he said, had no part in the violence, but she had lied to protect the both of them. Despite the confession, the case was complicated. Daniel was charged with second-degree murder and evidence tampering. His trial drew media attention far beyond Brookside Lane. Photos of the house, the surveillance footage stills, and text messages from the burner phone were broadcast across local news channels. The image of the perfect suburban couple shattered under the weight of secrets and a single deadly decision. Laura faced intense scrutiny but was never formally charged. However, her life unraveled all the same. Friends turned their backs. Community groups revoked her memberships. Whispers followed her in every store she entered. She eventually sold the house and left town, unable to escape the shadow of the scandal. As for Brookside Lane, the tragedy left a permanent scar. The once idyllic street now served as a quiet reminder that even the most perfect-looking lives can hide the darkest truths. And behind every white picket fence, no matter how polished, secrets can grow until they explode. The rain started just after sunset, soft at first, then heavier, soaking the streets of Brookside Lane in a constant drizzle that kept most neighbors inside. It was a Thursday evening, uneventful to anyone looking from the outside. But inside the Whitmore home, tension was building. Daniel had taken the day off without telling Laura. He stayed silent, blending into the background, his footsteps light, his presence barely noticeable. He had already reviewed the setup in the basement 3 times. The hidden camera was armed, its lens tucked inside a cardboard box of holiday lights on a high shelf, angled perfectly to capture the entire room. He had erased any sign of tampering and waited. Laura didn't notice anything unusual. She was distracted, pacing between windows and checking her phone. The messages had been brief that day. "You alone?" Tyler had asked. She had replied, "Soon." There was no mention of Daniel, no suspicion that he might be nearby. The plan was the same as always. Tyler would enter through the side gate, the one that didn't creak, and come through the basement's back door, which Laura always left unlocked on nights like this. Just after 8 p.m., Daniel saw the movement on the backyard camera he had installed a week earlier, hidden behind a bird feeder. Tyler, wearing a dark hoodie, slipped through the gate like he had done many times before. He paused once, looked around, then disappeared into the shadows behind the house. Daniel stayed still, his hands clenched tightly, heart pounding in his ears. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. What happened next lasted less than 5 minutes, but it would change everything. Tyler entered the basement. The camera recorded his cautious steps the moment he turned to close the door behind him. Seconds later, Daniel appeared from the shadows, blocking the exit. There was no audio, but the footage captured their movements. Tyler, stepping back, startled. Daniel moving forward, pointing, shouting silently. Tyler raised his hands defensively. The argument escalated quickly, their gestures growing more frantic. Then Daniel lunged. The video cut off abruptly. No one heard the sound of the fall. No one heard the sickening crack of bone against concrete. But upstairs, Laura did hear a noise, dull and heavy. She rushed down the steps only to find Tyler's body crumpled at the base of the stairs, his neck twisted unnaturally, blood beginning to pool beneath his head. She screamed. Paramedics arrived within minutes. So did the police. Laura was hysterical, claiming it had been an accident, that Tyler must have fallen. She told them he had been helping move storage boxes, that he lost his footing. It was the only story she could think of, and she stuck to it. But detectives quickly noticed discrepancies. The blood spatter was too far from the stairs. There were bruises on Tyler's arms that didn't match a simple fall. And most alarming of all, the basement's security system had been tampered with. The camera Daniel had installed was found, but its memory card had been removed and reinserted, partially wiped but not fully. That was the beginning of the unraveling. What had been hidden for months was now exposed, and the pieces left behind would tell a far more disturbing story than any of them were prepared to face. Daniel Whitmore had never been the kind of man to act on emotion. He was calm, methodical, someone who valued facts over feelings, but something had shifted in the house, and he couldn't ignore it anymore. Laura was different. Distant, distracted, and no longer present in the quiet rhythms of their life. She avoided eye contact, spent more time in the backyard, and had suddenly become protective of her gardening shed, which had never mattered much before. When he returned from work trips, he noticed her phone was always face down, and sometimes she wasn't even home when he arrived. At first, he blamed himself. Maybe he had been too busy, too preoccupied with work. But self-doubt quickly turned into suspicion. One day, while Laura was out grocery shopping, Daniel searched the shed. It was locked, which in itself struck him as odd. After 20 minutes of searching the garage, he found the spare key tucked inside an empty flower pot. Inside the shed, beneath a pile of old gardening gloves and a rusted trowel, he found a small black burner phone, still warm as if recently used. Curiosity gave way to shock as he scrolled through it. The messages were short but unmistakable, texts full of hidden meanings, late-night rendezvous, and times when Daniel had been away. He read them again and again, each word burning itself into his mind. There were photos, too, selfies taken in. The bedroom, angles that showed just enough to make everything clear. The sender was saved under a fake name, but it didn't take Daniel long to piece it together. Mentions of next door, casual references to the backyard, and finally one message that simply said, "I'll sneak through the gate like last time." Tyler. Daniel's stomach turned. The neighbor's son. The teenager he had trusted, invited into his home, paid for help. His mind raced through every interaction, every polite smile, every chore completed, every time Tyler had been inside the house when Daniel wasn't. Rage crept in quietly, tightening around his chest. But he didn't act on it. Not yet. Instead, he began documenting every message, every timestamp, every visit. He started pretending to leave for work while secretly parking around the corner and watching the house. He recorded dates, took photos of footprints in the garden, and even found cigarette butts with lipstick on them behind the shed, where Laura never smoked. He became a silent observer in his own home, watching his wife and the boy next door spiral deeper into a lie. But the more he uncovered, the less clarity he had. Was it an affair or something more dangerous? Was Tyler manipulating Laura, or was she the one in control? The questions ate at him. He didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, he began planning. Quietly, carefully. He bought a small surveillance camera and installed it in the basement, where Laura often told him she stored seasonal decorations. It was the one place Tyler never should have had a reason to go. But Daniel had a feeling he would. And when he did, there would be proof. The quiet husband, once ignored and overlooked, had turned into something else entirely. Watching, waiting, preparing for a truth he already knew but needed the world to see. The shift began slowly, almost invisibly. At first, it was just more time spent in each other's company. Tyler would linger a bit longer after finishing his chores, and Laura didn't seem to mind. In fact, she encouraged it. She began offering him lunch on Saturdays, inviting him inside to cool off after mowing the lawn. It was harmless, she told herself, just kindness. He was a good kid after all, polite, respectful, and always willing to help. But there was something else, something unspoken, yet steadily growing, a kind of tension neither of them fully acknowledged, but both seemed to feel. Laura was lonely. She wouldn't have admitted it out loud, not even to herself. Daniel had become a shadow in his own home, buried in spreadsheets and late-night phone calls. Their conversations had become transactional. Questions about bills, schedules, or groceries, rarely anything deeper. Touch had become rare, attention even rarer. She missed being seen, missed the feeling of being desired. With Tyler, she felt a flicker of that again. He looked at her differently, not with the indifference of a tired husband, but with curiosity, admiration, maybe even longing. Tyler, still just 17, was in that delicate space between boy and man. His world was filled with uncertainty, school pressures, future plans, and a lingering absence where a father figure should have been. Laura represented something he didn't quite understand at first. She was older, confident, and beautiful, in a mature, controlled way. She paid attention to him, asked about his day, listened with real interest. The more time they spent together, the more he found reasons to come over, fixing a leaky faucet, helping with heavy boxes, watering her plants while she watched. The excuses grew, and so did the closeness. One afternoon in early June, the line was crossed. No one saw it. There were no witnesses, no security cameras, and no sudden noise that made the neighbors look up from their quiet lives. Whatever happened between them happened behind the closed doors of the Whitmore home. But from that day forward, things changed. The way they looked at each other was different. There were stolen glances, subtle brushes of the hand, moments of silence that felt too loaded to be innocent. What had started as a casual friendship turned into a full-blown secret affair. Laura was careful, or at least she thought she was. She picked times when Daniel was away on business. She made sure no one saw Tyler entering the house. They used a burner phone for communication, one she kept hidden in her gardening shed, locked in a metal toolbox. Texts were brief and coded. Every meeting felt risky, every encounter more intense than the last. The danger was part of the thrill. For Laura, it was a revival. a way to feel alive again after years of emotional numbness. For Tyler, it was confusing, exhilarating, and all-consuming. Neither of them thought about consequences. They believed they were in control, that the secret could be kept buried forever. But secrets like these don't stay buried, not in neighborhoods like Brookside Lane, not when so many eyes are watching, just not closely enough. Brookside Lane looked like something out of a real estate brochure. Clean sidewalks, trimmed hedges, and families who waved at each other from their porches. It was a small, upper-middle-class neighborhood nestled on the edge of a larger city, known for its safety, good schools, and a sense of calm that rarely got interrupted. People moved there to escape the chaos of urban life, to raise children in peace, and to find a sense of community that still felt authentic. On the surface, it was the last place anyone would expect a scandal, let alone a death, to unfold. Among the longtime residents were Daniel and Laura Whitmore. They had lived in their two-story brick home for over 10 years. Daniel, a serious and hard-working finance consultant, spent much of his time either in his home office or traveling for work. He was the quiet type, reserved, predictable, a man who followed routine and valued structure. Laura, on the other hand, had once been vibrant and social. She had been a stay-at-home wife since their only child left for college 2 years earlier. With her days suddenly quieter, she filled her time with gardening, book clubs, and organizing community events like bake sales and yard cleanups. People liked her. She was warm, polite, and always smiling. Their marriage looked perfect from the outside. No one had ever seen them argue in public. They attended neighborhood barbecues together, exchanged gifts during holidays, and hosted dinners now and then. To their neighbors, the Whitmores were a picture of success and harmony. But those who looked closely might have seen the cracks. Laura's smile didn't always reach her eyes anymore, and Daniel often seemed more engaged with his laptop than with his wife. Still, in a place like Brookside Lane, people didn't pry. They assumed everyone had their own quiet problems and moved on. Next door to the Whitmores lived Jenna Marks, a single mother who had moved in 3 years earlier with her teenage son, Tyler. Jenna worked long hours at a dental clinic, often leaving Tyler to manage on his own. Despite the absence of a father figure, Tyler had turned out to be a responsible and well-mannered kid. He was tall, lean, with dark curly hair and the kind of awkward confidence that often came with being smart, but reserved. He helped his mother with chores, studied hard, and spent weekends doing small jobs for neighbors, mowing lawns, walking dogs, raking leaves. People trusted him, especially the Whitmores, who frequently asked him to help out when Daniel was away. Tyler and Laura first started interacting through these simple tasks. A quick thank you here, a lemonade on a hot day there. Nothing seemed unusual. In fact, many neighbors saw Laura as a mentor figure to Tyler, someone who could guide him, offer advice, and even serve as a surrogate aunt of sorts. That's how it began. No one suspected that a woman like Laura and a boy like Tyler would ever cross a line. But the truth is, beneath the still waters of Brookside Lane, something dark was already beginning to stir. And soon, the perfect image of this quiet neighborhood would be shattered beyond repair.